Welcome to the Train Signal. This is the Threat Management Gateway Monitoring and Reporting lesson in the Forefront Threat Management Gateway 2010 training course. We'll get this lesson started on a visual note by getting a look at the Threat Management Gateway console dashboard, which is really where everything comes together from a monitoring perspective. From there, you'll learn how to configure alerts so that you can be notified when particular things take place on your TMG system. Next up, we'll look at some real-time monitoring options that are available to you in Threat Management Gateway, and we'll take a look at the Windows Performance Monitor and Threat Management Gateway options that you have at your disposal. There are quite a few different options with the Performance Monitor counters, and Microsoft makes available to you a list of all of the counters and their descriptions. I'll show them to you here and also show you where you can find them from Microsoft. Logging is a big part of your monitoring duties, so you'll learn how to use the Threat Management Gateway logs in this lesson. Next up, we'll learn how to run reports, and we'll wrap up with a short discussion about how you can monitor with Operations Manager. We're not going to actually use Operations Manager, but I'll point you in the right direction. Threat Management Gateway is a critical part of the Global Mantic's infrastructure. As such, it needs to be able to remain in operation as much as possible and running well. Further, as network activity is taking place and things are happening, you're responsible for keeping an eye on everything. And you have to notify management when something is amiss. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to adequately monitor Threat Management Gateway performance and know how to use the console and Threat Management Gateway reports to report malfeasance or security issues to management. When it comes to monitoring the health of your overall Threat Management Gateway environment, the dashboard is really where it's at. As you can see on your screen, this is what the dashboard looks like. You already know the left-hand side of the screen is really where your navigation happens, and as you look over to the right-hand side, I've hidden the Actions area and the Tasks area so that we can focus on the meat, and that is the elements of the dashboard that you can use to monitor various aspects of how the Threat Management Gateway environment is operating. Right under the Dashboard tab, you're going to notice that you have an Alerts area. And on this sample system that's being run for Global Mantic, we currently have 14 warnings and 99 information alerts. Beneath that, we're getting some information about the network status, which we'll be discussing elsewhere in this course. And below that, you get a look at the various services that make up Threat Management Gateway. In the right-hand column, we have a number of session metrics that you can take a look at. And below that, we have some protection technology information. For example, network inspection system, blocked attacks, and right now it's kind of small, so it's hard to see everything, but we're going to go over and look at the Global Mantic system in a little bit. Underneath that, you can see that we have a problem. And that's because we have a big red X. That's how we know there's a problem. We can see that the definition updates for both malware inspection and the network inspection system have failed. And what we would have to do is, based on the information we see there, is go take appropriate action to determine why there was a failure in the update mechanism for those critical signature files. And at the bottom of the right-hand column, we have cache utilization, which gives you some information about the various cache metrics that are available in Threat Management Gateway. And at the very bottom of the dashboard, we see a system performance area. And right now, we get a look at CPU percentage, CPU usage, and available memory in megabytes. And you can see that this Threat Management Gateway system is running all over the place, anywhere from barely utilized to 100% utilized, although it doesn't seem to stay at 100% all that much, except that one little period in the middle. The memory metric is important as well, because without RAM, Threat Management Gateway can't really operate. But if I were to be looking at this in a production environment, I would look at the CPU percentage metric and be a little bit concerned about that time when it sat there at 100% for a little while, and then try to track down exactly why that took place. So as I mentioned, the dashboard provides at-a-glance information status, and that's really what you want. You don't want to have to pore over logs and pore over all kinds of pieces of information to find out exactly how your environment is running. You can click in various areas, all the headings are links, which will take you to other areas of the console that contain further information about each topic. And I mentioned briefly before what the various areas are, but let me go into a little bit more information. In the Alerts area, you can review system status and obtain high-level information about the number of errors or concerns right now that are currently being experienced by the Threat Management Gateway system. If you click the Alerts heading, you'll open up the Monitoring Area Alerts tab. If I go back to the dashboard, you'll notice over in the left-hand column, immediately below Dashboard, is a monitoring area. By clicking Alerts under the Dashboard tab in the Work area, I would move to the Monitoring tab, and it would open up an Alerts area there for me to get more information. In the Network Status area, you'll get to check the status of connectivity verifiers, and you can double-click a verifier to open the Monitoring Area Connectivity Verifiers tab. If you want to understand the state of Threat Management Gateway services, do so from the Services area and double-click Services to open up the Services tab in the Monitoring area. You may actually be seeing a pattern here. The dashboard is a conglomeration of elements from the monitoring area brought together in an easy-to-read way. In the Protection Technology area, we identify Threat Management Gateway features that are currently enabled and in use. As I mentioned, some Threat Management Gateway features require constant definition updates. Failure to update definitions can place an organization in jeopardy, because by not having definitions updated, as is the case for Global Mantics right now, then Global Mantics is left exposed to new attacks as they are identified. Then we mentioned CAS utilization earlier and system performance. We're going to start by trying to determine why definition updates are failing for the Global Mantics Threat Management Gateway server and take corrective action in order to fix the problem. That's the whole purpose of the dashboard, is to help you identify what's going wrong so you can take corrective action to correct the issue. And here we are at the Global Mantics Threat Management Gateway Server console. And you'll notice it looks a little bit different than the screenshot I showed you. That's because some time has passed since I took the screenshot. However, one thing that has not changed is the fact that we have a definition update issue. Both malware inspection and network inspection system updates, definition updates, are not happening. The status is still failed. So I'll click on definition updates to be taken to the update center, where we have the protection mechanisms listed and their current status. And again, you're going to see that both are in a failed state and the last time that the information was updated. So let's click on malware inspection, and we're going to be told that an error occurred during an attempt to update the definitions, and that we can look at the event viewer for any errors that are basically related to malware inspection. Well, in the event viewer, we've got some errors. One of the errors I want to point out here is event 23481, which says the last 33 attempts to check for updates for the malware inspection protection mechanism on the server TMG1 failed. Well, this is a Windows Update mechanism, so let's take a look at Windows Update. And as you can see, the last time updates were installed was quite some time back, because we're well beyond May 10th, 2011 at this point. So let's check our Windows Update settings and see what's going on. Well, here's the problem. It was somewhere along the line, Windows Update was changed to never check for updates. So we're going to change this to install updates automatically and then click OK. Windows will then go out and check for updates again. And you're going to see that there are quite a few updates that need to be applied to this system. Let's take a look at the updates list. Lots of good stuff there. Let's install the updates. And I'm going to pause the server while I let this run and reboot. And here we are over at the Threat Management Gateway console once again. And you'll notice once again that we have Network Inspection System and Malware Inspection System failure messages under Definition Updates. Notice also that the Definition Updates header is clickable. So I'll click Definition Updates. And this will bring me to the Update Center where definition updates are managed. If I choose the Malware Inspection item, I'm going to get some more information at the bottom of the page. If I'm looking for more information about what could be going wrong, I can go to the Alerts area in Monitoring, or I can go to the event log on the system. But I want to actually right-click malware inspection and choose check for and install new definitions. I want to see what happens exactly when the system tries to do this in an automated way. Well, here we go. The Microsoft Update Service option is not selected for the server, so updates cannot be retrieved. To enable the option, select Configure Settings in the Tasks tab. While the Tasks tab is at the right-hand side of the screen, it happens to be right here. So I'll click Configure Settings, go to the Microsoft Update option, and you're going to see right here, I do not want to use the Microsoft Update Service. Well, I do. So, Service. Well, I do. So, click OK. Once again, I have to apply the settings. And this time, I'll go back and choose Malware Inspection and do check for and install new definitions. And now I'll get a message that says, Forefront server has started checking for and installing updates. It may take some time. But I can look for update status in the definition updates pane. Well, nothing's happened yet, but that's okay. We will wait for it to take place. And after waiting for a few minutes, you can see now that the malware inspection items are now up to date. Network inspection system is still behind, but as that update cycle works its way through, that will eventually turn green as well, even without my intervention. So if I go to the dashboard now, we'll see malware inspection status is up to date. So we'll use the dashboard to identify a problem, move to the right area of the console to correct that problem, and we took corrective action in order to correct an error condition that could have left our system vulnerable. Let's dig a little deeper into some of the options you have with regard to monitoring your system. First of all, alerts. Alerts are raised to let you know when Threat Management Gateway is experiencing problems, and there are 3 levels of alerts that can be raised. One is informational, and that just basically says, here's what's going on. Not really necessary to take a whole lot of action with these. Next, you have a warning. And warnings can be anything that is basically something you should know about and may have to take action, but not necessarily keeping your system from operating as it's supposed to. And then we have the most serious condition, which is an error condition. You got to see one of these just a minute ago when we fixed a signatures problem. This is something that's actively preventing your Threat Management Gateway system from operating as it's supposed to, or it's a serious condition. You can configure Threat Management Gateway to notify you when alerts are raised. And there's lots of different events that can take place as a part of this overall notification process. You can simply have the alert raised in the dashboard, which we've seen. You can have details of the alert emailed to you. And this might be useful, for example, in that definition problem we just saw. You'd probably want to know more proactively that there was a problem with the definitions download, so you may choose to have Threat Management Gateway email you the alert details. You can also choose to run a program. So you may want to have something recycle, for example, if there's a particular problem with the Threat Management Gateway service. You can have the alert written to the Windows log, so to a Windows event log. This is particularly useful for those organizations that pull the Windows event logs together into a central repository and then do a monitoring against that, or for those that are using System Center Operations Manager in some ways. Or you can stop and start selected services. So if a particular service goes bad, you can actually have that service automatically stopped and restarted in Threat Management Gateway. There are dozens of different alerts that you can enable and configure in Threat Management Gateway. Each and every one of these alerts is described in detail on the link that you see on your screen. And let me show you that really quick, although we're not going to go through each and every item. Here you can see that we've got a list of all of the alerts, and it's going to tell you what the alert is, a description of the alert and why it would be raised, and additional conditions. So basically here it tells you that there's any connection failure for this particular alert. What conditions raise this alert? You can choose some alert event logging details as well. For example, how should the event be logged in Windows, and frequency configuration options, and we'll take a look at those in just a second. Global Mantix wishes to be proactively notified when an IP spoofing attempt takes place. So configure the IP spoofing alert to send an email message to secadmin@globalmantix.com when one of these attempts occurs. So we're going to go over to the Threat Management Gateway console right now, and we're going to take a look at alert event logging, and we're going to configure this IP spoofing alert. And here we are. Notice I've gone to the monitoring area now, and I'm on the Alerts tab. I'm going to choose the Configure Alert Definitions options over under Tasks, which will open up the Alert Properties window. You're going to see we have a number of alert definitions, and we're going to look for the one that's called IP spoofing. Well, there it is. So I'll choose IP spoofing and click Edit. You'll notice that this is enabled, which means that it will be raised if an IP spoofing attempt takes place. And you get a little bit of information about this particular alert, including the description, the category in which it belongs, as well as its severity. And you can change these pieces of information if you like. On the Events tab, this is how it's going to end up in the event log. So, the event is an IP spoofing event. The IP packet source address is not valid. And we can have it take place, be written to the event log after a particular number of occurrences or a number of events per second. So what happens is there's a bunch of defaults for each alert. Right now, it's number of events per second or 5 times per second, and it's going to be raised as an event in the log. And when it's raised, what do we want to do? Well, we want to send an email. And we're going to have the email server, set up the SMTP server at ex1.globalmantics.com. And we're going to be from secadmin at globalmantics.com and to secadmin at globalmantics.com. And down here is where you'll see report to Windows event log. And if you wanted to, you could stop and start services as well. And then when you're ready, click the test button. I'm not going to do that here, but it'll make sure that the Threat Management Gateway system can actually send that email message. Let me just select Stop Selected Services for a second, and I'll click the Select button so you can see what your options are. Notice I can't just stop any service I want. I can stop select Forefront Threat Management Gateway services, including the firewall and the job scheduler. So this is a way that I could recycle services if I find it necessary. And then I'd apply my settings. And then now when this event is raised, the Threat Management Gateway system will email the security administrator at GlobalMantics. Threat Management Gateway has some real-time monitoring options that you can use as well, starting with session monitoring, which allows you to monitor individual sessions that are currently being managed by Threat Management Gateway. You can monitor sessions that are opened by a specific computer or by a user and track the activities in real time. If necessary, you can also disconnect an active session through the administrative console. And we'll go over back to the console in a few minutes and see all this. Earlier, I mentioned what's called a connectivity verifier. This ensures that connectivity to a particular service is actually available, and you have a choice of methods at your disposal. You can have Threat Management Gateway issue an HTTP GET method to make sure that a web server is up and that the web server is actually operational. Now you may just say, well, why can't you just ping the server? Well, the ping will tell you that the server is actually up, but by using HTTP GET, you can actually make sure that the web server service is actually running as well. And you can have an option to choose TCP connection to a specific port. This will allow you to make sure that a specific service is operating. So you may actually set up a TCP connection to go to port 21 or something along those lines to make sure that an FTP server is operational. GlobalMantics will create a connectivity verifier that watches DC1 and makes sure that the Active Directory service stays available. We're going to use the ping method for this particular connectivity verifier. This time, notice that we're still in the monitoring area, but we've chosen the Connectivity Verifier tab, and we've got a couple of verifiers already created. I have one called Test and one called Fail Test because I wanted to see one that worked and one that didn't work. And you can see that the Fail Test one is a TCP test that opens up port 5190 on the domain controller. Well, there is nothing at that port, so that's why that test has failed. I wanted to see both a failure condition and a success condition. What I'm interested in right now, however, is creating a new connectivity verifier. We're going to create two here. We'll start with just overall DC1 health. This will let us see whether or not DC1 is actually up. I'll actually browse. You'll see it fills it in that way. And the group type to be used to categorize this connectivity verifier. We'll just call this Active Directory. And we'll send a ping request. And finish. Now right now there is no health status because it takes a little bit of time for Threat Management Gateway to catch up. So in the meantime, we'll create the second connectivity verifier. And this is going to be DC1 LDAP. This is going to actually test the LDAP service itself. And once again, we're going to do DC1. And we're going to put it into the Active Directory group. But this time we want to establish a TCP connection to the LDAP port. And you can see that there's lots of different options for what ports you can choose. And we'll do next and finish. And we'll apply our settings and choose OK. And you're going to see that the first one is a ping type. Threshold is 5,000 milliseconds. And it's in the process of verifying. One of them just went, just switched orders. So we're looking at the result right now. Two of them are verifying. We have one that's good and one that's in an error, as we can see from the icons over to the left-hand side. So we'll refresh this now. And I'm going to pause the video while this finishes verifying, and when we come back, we should see green check marks if everything is working appropriately. And we're back. And as you can see now, we have good status results next to each one. Expanding them just basically gives you similar information. There's not much exciting there, but I wanted to show you it anyway. Right now we're seeing that the result is pretty good timing, 16 milliseconds and less than 1 millisecond for the LDAP service. Also wanted to show you the sessions page. Right now, these are the sessions that are open in Threat Management Gateway. And as you can see, we have a secure NAT connection open from 10.1.1.254, which happens to be our domain controller. And if we wanted to, we could get some information about that session. We can edit the filter that shows it, or we can disconnect the session. We can also stop monitoring sessions or pause monitoring sessions. But this gives you an opportunity to get some information about what's actually happening in real time on your Threat Management Gateway system. Windows Performance Monitor has been around for a long time, and it's a common tool that administrators use to make sure that their systems are running at peak levels. Once you install Threat Management Gateway, a number of new Performance Monitor counters become available. You can use these performance monitors to make sure that your system is operating at expected levels. Remember, this is critical infrastructure. You don't want to let it get overloaded or burdened too much so that it affects the user experience. The point at which performance becomes problematic is dependent on the hardware resources that are available to Threat Management Gateway. And what that means is I can't sit here and say, okay, you're going to have a problem when you have this much of a load. It really depends on your hardware configuration. And the only way you can get a gauge for that and how it's actually operating in reality is to use a tool like Performance Monitor. Now you got to see the high-level performance stats, CPU and RAM, in the Threat Management Gateway dashboard. But Performance Monitor lets you do a little bit more. Global Mantix is going to actually use the Performance Monitor to track the total number of active connections on the Threat Management Gateway system. And this is one measure by which you can see how much of a load is being placed on the system. The next couple of slides here will have a list of all of the Performance Monitor variables at your disposal. I'm not going to go over these in detail. These are actually available from Microsoft. There'll be a link later in this lesson that shows you where to find this information. I am now going to go over to the Threat Management Gateway system, and we're going to create a performance monitor that will watch the active number of connections to the Threat Management Gateway system. And we're back over here at the console, but this time we're going to go to the Start menu, and we're going to start the performance monitor by typing perfmon in the run area. You're going to see that there's already a performance monitor running by default, which there generally is. We'll maximize the screen. This one just happens to be the percent processor time. We'll right-click that and choose Properties. We're going to remove the default counter, and we're going to add our own. So we'll click Add, and we're going to scroll up until we get to the forefront items. And we want to look at the packet engine. Active connections. The number of active connections that we have right now. And before I go out any further, I want to show you there's a whole bunch of things you can add here. In the firewall service, you've got active sessions. You can add more than one item if you like to your performance monitor counter, and you can add them from different areas. So let's just add both of those. What the heck? And we'll do OK. And you can see they have different colors. We'll do Apply and OK, and we'll start seeing some interesting results. You'll notice that for active sessions, we're seeing around 11 or 15 or 12 active sessions right now, and active connections and active sessions, we're seeing a slightly lower number. And that really makes sense because each session can have multiple connections. So we're seeing about 6 sessions right now, and in general, 11 connections from those 6 sessions. So as the system is being used, this number would vary, and you would see this graph change, just like it did right here when an additional session was opened somewhere along the line. That's how you use Performance Monitor. It's actually pretty easy to do, and you can see we have another blip here. We just dropped down to 10 connections. So it's pretty easy to use Performance Monitor, and you can see you can get some real-time information from this tool. The Threat Management Gateway logs a whole lot of stuff. We're going to cover managing the actual firewall logs themselves in the Forefront Threat Management Gateway Firewall Rules lesson. But I want to make sure you understand that you can watch log activity in real time. Now, if you're able to drink water from a fire hose, you don't need to use a filter, and you can just watch everything happen in real time. However, there's so much taking place that you would have to be like Commander Data from Star Trek The Next Generation in order to be able to keep up with it and how fast it's going to scroll by the screen. So you can use filters to limit the kind of log information you're after. If you like, you can save a filter for later use as well. And you can do things like manage settings so that you can change log text colors for easier reading. Global Mantics will create a log filter that provides a real-time look when people browse to military or government sites. So we're going to go over to the Threat Management Gateway server now, and we're going to create this filter and then test it. And I'm back over at the Threat Management Gateway console. This time I'm in the Logs and Reports area, Logging tab. And as you can see, I've already got a filter running. This is a typical filter. And we're looking at the log record type of firewall or web proxy filter information. And we're going to look at everything that's happened in the past hour. While doing so brings up way too much information. There's actually more than 10,000 records here. So I'm going to edit this filter. And I'm going to filter by additional conditions. In this case, I want URL information. So I'm going to do URL category equals, and I'm going to choose government military. And then I'll click Add to List. Now, I'm going to click the Start Query button, and we're going to not get a whole lot here at the bottom of the screen because there's no results. Well, let's change that. I've moved over to a Windows 7 desktop that happens to be being protected by Threat Management Gateway, and we're going to browse to the White House website. And there's our president. Now let's go back over to the Threat Management Gateway server and see what kind of results we got. Look at that. We got a whole lot. This time we're going to see that they're all green. They were allowed connections because that's allowed via the rules that we have in place. But because we browsed to a government or military site, we're seeing it in real time what's going on or everything that's happened in the past hour. And you can see that there were a whole lot of connections opened just to load that one page. Notice I had to hit Start Query again. That refreshed the screen, and pull everything from the last hour. If I have this set for real time, it would show me things as it's actually happening. In the related tasks area, actually happening information, you can define log text colors. We can save this to filter definition, copy results to a clipboard so you can move them somewhere else, and you can hide IPv6 log entries so that if you don't use IPv6, you don't have to worry about those particular entries getting in the way of your management responsibilities. At the bottom, there's some other information. So for each individual log entry, there may be additional information. Here was the client agent that was used. So you can get a lot of pretty good information from right here about exactly how communication is taking place. Next up is reporting. And there's all kinds of good stuff that you can report on in Threat Management Gateway. And you can create different kinds of reports for different needs. You can create one-time reports that are basically your one-off ad hoc reports. You can also run recurring report jobs. So these reports will run automatically on a daily, weekly, or monthly cycle. This might be useful if you want to see results every week for managers that need to know what their users have been doing for the previous week or day or month. And you also have the user activity report job day or month, what users have been up to. And you can granularly manage content that will be included in each report. For example, you can report on the number of top users to include on the report. And this will make more sense in just a second. There are some global report settings that you can also configure in the Threat Management Gateway console, including the report generation time. So when you run those daily, weekly, or monthly reports, at what time will they run? And you can choose exactly how many daily and monthly summaries you would like to keep around. You may not need to keep them forever and ever, so Threat Management Gateway gives you the opportunity to define how long you want to keep them. Global Mantics is going to create a report for the month of May that shows the top web consumers, the most visited sites, the most used protocols, overall traffic usage, peak connections, and request processing time. This will give management a look at exactly who's using the web the most, what sites are being visited the most, traffic patterns, and making sure that the Threat Management Gateway system is not bottlenecking requests because the request processing time is too high. Once again, in the logging and reporting area, choose the reporting tab this time. Now you can see that there are some test reports out here, but we're going to create a one-time report. We're going to call this Global Mantics May. And we're going to report on the entire month. We're not going to include URL filtering and network inspection system results, but we are going to include other information. The web usage, application or protocol usage, traffic and utilization, security, and malware protection. And we can edit report details if we like. So we can actually choose in each one of these areas what we want to include on the report and how we want to include it. So for the summary part of the report, which is at the top, we can choose cache. It's going to include cache performance, and we can sort that by total bytes. How do we want statistics to appear? Well, there's nothing for statistics. For daily traffic, there's nothing for daily traffic. For top websites, how many sites do we wish to include on the report? And if we want to include 10 only, we can do that. And you notice you can do that for each individual section. So choose web usage and then choose edit report details. And this is going to, again, give you opportunities to modify each and every component of the report. So you can really tailor this information to your needs. And when you're ready, click Next. If you want, you can have an email notification sent for the report. So you can actually have the report automatically emailed to someone. But we're just going to view it here. And then we'll click Next again. And we don't need to publish the reports, but we can if we want to. We'll just save it to the administrator folder. And then click Finish. So we have a report here called Global Mantics May. We'll apply the changes. Everything's the settings change. But let's run the report. Let's view it. Generate and view selected report. And it takes a little bit of time for the report to generate. Now I'm going to allow the ActiveX stuff to run, allow the blocked content, because I want to see everything. And I'll maximize the screen so we can see the report. And you can see that we have our top protocols, and you can see that there's actually a way to over here, there's navigation at the left-hand side of the report. So there's our top protocols, the top websites that we've been using, overall cache performance, and if we scroll down, we can see what some of this stuff means. So objects returned from the internet, information not available, and we can see that our cache has not been that great. Well, there's not been a lot of traffic on this system, so there's not going to be great caching going on. Traffic, this gives you some information about traffic by date. So you can see that earlier in the month we were doing a lot of leveled off, and it gives you some pretty good traffic indicators. And over time, you may start seeing patterns in your traffic that help you plan bandwidth better. Traffic by time of day is an aggregate. And some general statistics about overall traffic trends. Total inbound traffic, all that good stuff. Now, we also have top protocols, which you got to see before, but this gives you a little bit more information. So 44% of our requests were DNS related. The top threats that we saw from a malware perspective, we saw our eCard test file is a severe threat. So we actually saw that 3 times in May. And we get to see inspection times for things like malware protection. How long did it take us to actually process those requests? 145 milliseconds is pretty poor. That would potentially be noticeable to users, so you might want to try to troubleshoot that if it continued. As you can see, there's a lot of good information here, but it gives you some detailed information that you can use in ongoing planning activities and making sure that your threat management gateway system remains in peak operating condition. Before we wrap up this lesson, I want to mention System Center Operations Manager. TrainSignal sells a System Center Operations Manager 2007 training course produced by me for TrainSignal. And I believe Windows System Center Operations Manager is a fantastic monitoring tool, particularly if you have a very heavy Microsoft environment. If you are running Operations Manager, you can download the Forefront Threat Management Gateway Monitoring Management Pack from the System Center Management Pack catalog area. This management pack includes monitors and rules that track Threat Management Gateway deployed topology and features, performance and reliability information and availability information. It includes detailed alert information which helps you quickly solve problems and take corrective action. And it allows you to collect and analyze performance trends and metrics so that you can proactively manage your Threat Management Gateway deployments to resolve issues before major problems really occur. And that's free if you already have Operations Manager. We kicked this lesson off with a look at the Threat Management Gateway console dashboard because a picture is now worth 1,150 words due to inflation. Next, we moved on to configuring alerts and getting a look at some real-time monitoring options that you have at your disposal, including Windows Performance Monitor and a list of Performance Monitor counters. Next up, you use the TMG log information to see how users are actually working in real time, and learn how to run reports so that you can get information from a historical perspective. And then we looked at the Operations Manager monitoring item. Here's a support and resource that I think is fantastic and really you have to have if you're going to do anything with Threat Management Gateway alerts. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.